Welcome to After Hours with me, Rick Kogan. This first hour is devoted to my new friend, John Robert Wiltgen, who I should have known. We crossed paths, I got to believe, a million different times. A million different times, but in those days I was drinking heavily, so I probably missed it. He has written a book, his memoir, the first, I think, of what will be a series of memoirs, just given the last 15 minutes of conversation I've had with him. It is titled The Candy in My Pocket, The Wild and Crazy Life of a Type 1 Diabetic. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, oh, man, I don't want to hear any sad stories. The thing about this book, John, is, yes, you are a Type 1 diabetic. Yes, you have had some serious health problems over which you have triumphed. But this is a book about enjoying life. I mean, if I had to say in one sentence, it's about enjoying life. You've had a charmed, I would say, diabetes or no, you've had a charmed life. Do you agree?
100%. I have tried to make the most out of every day of my life. I've tried to not focus on the hazards that I've encountered as a result of being a type 1 diabetic, and instead make plans for having even more fun.
Yeah.
So I, started at a young age, as you know.
You were 8 years old when you got the diagnosis, yes?
Yes. And at that time, my parents were told that I would not live to see 40.
And did they tell you that?
No. Years...
Certainly they
later,
didn't tell you at 8. Yeah.
Right. They're not going to tell me, but a couple years later, it was like breakfast room table talk between my aunt and my mother, and they were like speaking in a theater hushed whisper that I could still hear sitting at the table. And I thought, wow, if I'm not going to make it to 40, I'd better go out there and do everything that I want to do without regard to what I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to read a little bit from this introduction. You, I must say, you have lived so far, and I guess ongoing, life to the very fullest. You write in the book, in the introduction to The Candy in My Pocket, we'll explain what that means shortly. I felt there could be a black cloud in my future when Sid Caesar told me, if you don't have tragedy, you don't have comedy. I'm trying to imitate Sid Caesar. Crying and laughter are the same thing, but you can never laugh too hard. Then you write a paragraph later that you wrote this book to help people of all beliefs and backgrounds remain optimistic in the worst of times, no matter what personal or professional challenges you're dealing with. That also seems to be the way you've led your life. You have tried to be, I think, an example to other people that you met in the course of your incredibly checkered but successful life. Yeah?
I don't know that at the time that I was thinking that I was being the example.
Exactly.
I think that perhaps I was an example, but that wasn't what was going on in my own head. My own head was like, let's party on,
Sure.
I want to have a good time. I don't want
Sorene's is open till 4 a.m. Let's go party.
Well, for instance, there was a time when Steve and I were going to go to Paris the next morning, and during the middle of the night, I passed out because I had this low blood sugar episode, and it was really bad, really low. And he's like, we don't have to go. And I'm like, you know what? I can feel shitty on the plane. I can feel shitty in Paris. We're going. And that's kind of how I've lived. I mean, even when I didn't feel the best, it was still like, party on, Garth.
When you got that diagnosis at 8, I am assuming that at the time, that would be some 50-some years ago.
You're being nice.
Well, I'm trying. That there have been incredible advances in the care of diabetes.
Oh, my God. But from then till today, the advances are tremendous. I mean, we still have not found a cure. And when I was in my early 30s, I actually sat on the board of the Chicago chapter for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And at that time, we kept telling people, we're so close to a cure, give us more money.
Yeah, sure.
And my job was vice president of fundraising. So when we didn't find that cure, it kind of made me look bad, But yes, it's a totally different ballgame today. It's one that people don't have to worry the way that our parents worried when people were diagnosed at my age. My parents were given a death sentence for me. And that is not what's happening today, which is awesome.
In this, you talk about how your mother at first, you're very, very moving about your mother thought you had the flu, right?
Correct.
And then she learned you had something worse than the flu.
Yes.
How did she break the news to you?
Well, there was no breaking the news to me. And we were in the doctor's office because I had lost like 25 pounds as an 8-year-old. Wow. And so we went immediately from the doctor's office to the hospital. The doctor said, do not skip go, do not collect $200, get yourself to Holy Family Hospital, and I'll see John there. And that's what happened. There was no time to even think about what we were doing. We just rushed off.
You write in the book, it's very interesting. You say, why me? I continually wondered. I was only 8 years old and already hated my life. We will continue this conversation, and we will get into the part where you don't hate your life so much, but you're getting some very lucky breaks, and you're leaving high school and working in a paint store, and from there you become this internationally known designer, traveling the world, meeting everybody. We will be back with John Robert Wiltgen. The Candy in My Pocket is the name of the book. The life story is pretty amazing. Welcome back. My guest, John Robert Wiltgen, and I are talking about his book, The Candy in My Pocket, about his diagnosis with diabetes when he was 8 years old, and how he writes in the book, why me? I continually wondered. I was only 8 years old and already hated my life. But you pretty quickly found a very interesting life. Did you drop out of high school in Arlington Heights?
No, I graduated in 3 years.
Okay.
I had enough credits because I was taking independent studies, and I had no free times during the course of the day.
Yeah.
My schedule was booked with classes.
What were you thinking of doing? Did you have any notion?
I had no idea.
Nothing.
No idea at all.
Were you drawn to any particular class, like art class, for instance?
I was in art class. I was in theater class. I was in creative writing class. Plus all the,
math,
chemistry
science,
and math, all that stuff.
All that boring stuff you have to do.
Shop.
Yeah, shop. I did shop when I was in high school, too.
So, but a lot of it focused on the creative side of the brain, I will say.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that our school had all those different types of classes.
Sure, it was a big high school.
It was a big high school. And we were fortunate that there was funding for those kinds of additional courses. It wasn't just the basics.
Exactly.
I really enjoyed my time there. Although I will say that a lot of the students there were jealous of me because by the time I was in my sophomore year and I had a car. Yeah. My first car was a Cadillac Seville 4-door convertible, white leather interior.
Like something out of The Sopranos,
It had fins in the back.
Wow.
It was the most awesome car.
Your parents gave you the car?
No, I bought it.
You bought it?
I was 15 years old. I rode my bike to this little old lady's house who only drove it to church on Sundays. I didn't even have a driver's license yet. I put my bicycle in the trunk of the car and drove off.
When did you start working? Your main job in this era of your life, John, was working. You became the manager of a paint store.
Well, I was the manager of the paint store when I had already graduated from high school.
Okay.
prior to that time, I was working part-time in a different paint store and stocking shelves and mixing paint colors and selling wallpaper and a little bit of everything. Unloading the truck when the truck came with, 50,000 gallons of paint.
Did you have any interest in going to college?
Yeah.
Okay. I know you did go to school, but it wasn't.
Right.
It was a conventional
okay, so
university.
I had interest in going to school. My ma said, become an accountant because you can always get a job as an accountant.
Okay.
So I went to Harper
mom.
for a semester, and I took some accounting classes, and I thought, I'll leave out the expletive.
Okay.
There's no way I'm going to study accounting. I was just like, that's not for me. And Glidden Paint, by the time I did become manager and I was done with high school, paid for my education.
Yeah.
And so I decided I was going to try my hand at design. I was busy for years already picking up paint and wallpaper for people that came
that's
to
a
the
sort
store.
of interesting.
So that was kind of the transition from point A to point B or C or whatever it was.
Did you meet at the store? Were there designers coming in?
No. I was in Arlington Heights.
I understand that. Nothing against Arlington Heights. Yes.
I'm not knocking Arlington Heights. I will say it was a great place to grow up as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great childhood. We spent a lot. Our yard was like an acre, and we spent a lot of time outside in the back, doing, having to think up things to do to have fun, as opposed to sitting in front of a television,
TV or playing a video game.
Right, I have never played a video game in my life.
Keep it that way. Seriously, keep it that way. All right, what drew you into the design world?
Well, as I say, having sold paint and wallpaper, that was kind of like it just led me right into it because I liked that part of the job.
Yeah.
Once I became manager and I was accounting for sales and accounting for the cost of employees and things like that, it wasn't as much fun.
Mm-hmm.
But going to school at nighttime, I started with night school.
Where?
2 nights a week at Ray Vogue College of Design, which is where Ralph Lauren is today.
Yep.
It was a 6-story building.
Charmette's restaurant downstairs.
Charmette's restaurant. And we went there
some of the greatest milkshakes
class.
ever.
Right.
How did you like design? How did you take to design school?
I loved it.
Why?
Because I thought that I had found a way to use my creativity and make money.
Yeah.
I had my friend Liana got a 4-year scholarship, an art scholarship, and she was an amazing artist. But it's like, what do you do with that once you get that degree? It's tough. It's much tougher to make a living as an artist.
As a creative visual artist, it's very hard. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to what I did. It was easier to market what I did to people.
Yeah.
And I was good at marketing. So,
well, you're also a charming guy, and you
should have seen me when I was younger.
That's what I'm saying, my friend. And because you wound up starting a business when you were under 21. Talk about that for a while. You met someone who mentored you. Is that fair to say, John?
Oh, my God. She was like my... I don't even know how to describe her.
Svengali.
Okay, I wasn't going to use that word.
Okay.
She was like the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen on the planet.
Where'd you meet her?
At school.
Yeah.
In class. And she sat on one side of the room, and I sat on the other. And we didn't have assigned seats, but I didn't want to make it obvious in the next class time, go sit right next to her. So I slowly moved my chair around the room.
Her. It was the first classroom stalking adventure.
And we became really good friends.
Yep.
And for a while, she would take me to places that I would never have been to otherwise.
Huckleberries, which was a private club.
But before Huckleberries, Serenes.
Yeah.
And Faces.
Mm-hmm.
And she was instrumental in helping me, when I was 18 years old, get my own membership to Faces.
Wow.
Because I already had my own stationery for a business, and so I just wrote a letter on
saying, hi, I
my
would like to
business
become a member.
And I had references in addition to her.
What was your business? The Glidden paint store business?
No, I was kind of doing houses on the side while I was working for Glidden.
Good God. So you were working for Glidden, and you had already sort of...
I already knew that I wasn't going to be there forever.
You didn't want a business card that said manager Glidden's paint.
I had one of those, but I didn't pass that one out.
Yeah.
Except I told that story when we were at a party in some party room on top of a building like at 200 East Delaware or whatever, in those days when those buildings were new. And she was older than me.
Mm-hmm. She was married.
She was separated. Okay, she was separated. But my mother and my father both referred to her as Mrs. Robinson.
That, ladies and gentlemen, from the movie The Graduate. You decided to start a firm with this woman and her soon-to-be separated or whatever he was.
Yes. Well, Rhonda and I started the business first. She had 50%, I had 50% of the business, and we were slowly growing this business. And then she suggested that we each sell a bit of our business to her former husband, former keyword, and that way he might be more instrumental in helping us get work.
But in that way, shortly after that, you got involved in a really, really, I think, unfair and wicked lawsuit, did you not?
Well, it was not right away. It was like 18 months later.
Yeah, but you were still under 21. That's a fascinating thing to me.
I was 20 at the time. He found out that she and I were kind of having this relationship outside of work. Mm-hmm. And he was livid. And he had called the office. My secretary answered the phone, and she put me on, and he used some expletives and then hung up. Well, then 10 minutes later, he's in our office. My secretary grabs her fur coat and runs out the door. Fur coat that Victor Galetta's bought her. I had to throw that in. And she runs down the hall, and I never see her again.
That's where we will leave this story for the moment when we take a news break. It is fat, and we're never going to get to. We'll probably get to John when he's like age 25, and then we'll have to come back and be on again. I want to talk about all the people we know in common, and many of whom we don't know in common, because you did the interior design work for Jerry Krause, the general manager of the Bulls.
Yep.
Among
that was a hoot.
Many people, Steve Harvey, there are a number of others. You'll hear those stories when we come back after the news. Welcome back. I am still sitting here wonderfully, engagingly with John Robert Wiltgen, the author of The Candy in My Pocket, The Wild and Crazy Life of a Type 1 Diabetic. You can get this book anywhere. I mean, in bookstores, online, anywhere. We're talking about... we got him up to the age of 21. He's already had an amazing life. He's gone from Arlington Heights to Chicago. He is designing all sorts of things. He has become, in the intervening years, one of the most acclaimed designers in the architectural world. That's the way I'm going to frame it, because I think that's...
I like that.
Well, because many people think, interior... The phrase interior decorator has always bugged me, because it is not about decorating. It is about creating, I think, an environment. Is that the way you always thought of
well, I would say
job?
That an interior decorator is someone that paints houses and hangs wallpaper.
Gotcha. Exactly. And that's not
what my industry does is totally different from that.
Sure.
Although we may be on site to approve that paint color and to say, add a little bit more neutral tone or add a little bit more red oxide or do something to kill the green in that paint color, but we're not painting the house.
You're a remarkably engaging person, just in my limited experience here. That's part of it, too. You are collaborating with clients. It is not as if you are selling them a can of paint. Do you not think of it, and I get this from your book, it's a collaborative venture when you're decorating. Jerry Krause, for instance.
Okay.
Jerry Krause calls you on the phone and says, "Hey, I know you can't play for the Bulls, but could you decorate my house?" Is that basically the way it goes?
That's the very short version. When Jerry Krause called my office, I had this person who answered the phone, and she says to me, "Jerry Krause is on the phone. Jerry Krause is on the phone." And I'm like, "Well, who's that?"
You're not a basketball fan.
I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's like, "He is the general manager of the Chicago Bulls." I'm like, "Is that the baseball team?" I mean, really, I was so. Well, first of all, I spent my whole life in the art world.
Yeah, sure.
And then I went to work. And when you open your own business, you're working 7 days a week. You're working till 10 o'clock at night.
Of course.
It is totally all consuming.
Yeah.
So she, I finally get it. It's the Chicago Bulls. They play basketball, and Jerry Krause is the general manager. So I pick up the phone, I talk to him, and he's like, "Well, I got your name from so-and-so, and we're building a house in Hibernia, and would you be interested in working with us?" I'm thinking, would I be interested? Of course. And so at the time, they were living in Skokie in a particularly modest house. Mm-hmm. It was nothing flashy by any means.
Sure.
Nor was the house that I did for them in Hibernia. But
where's Hibernia?
Hibernia is a subdivision in Highland Park.
Oh, okay.
Built by Red Seal Homes.
Okay.
But anyways, the very first pro basketball game I'd ever been to in my life was with Jerry Krause. And it was in the old stadium.
Love the old stadium.
His seats were right over where the team came out.
Yes, of course. Well,
so that's where we sat. And I don't know anything about the game, so it didn't matter who got a basket, I was cheering. And Jerry is glaring at me. And
what is wrong with you?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't say that. He would not. I will say
he had quite a glare, though. He did.
But you know what? He was the kindest man, one of the kindest men I've ever worked with. And Stephen and I gave all kinds of parties. He and Thelma came. I mean, he was just a real down-to-earth guy. But for all the years that I was working with them, after when the new stadium opened, I got 4 tickets to the game.
Wow.
We had dinner in the governor's room. And we sat in an owner's skybox. You have no idea how popular I was during those years.
I can only imagine.
"Oh, John, what are you doing tonight?" The phone calls I would get.
Oh.
And I tried
Are you using your tickets, John?
I mean, I tried to evenly invite different people to come.
Sure. Was he hard? Was he easy to deal with or hard to deal with? He and his wife.
His wife was in control of everything.
Okay.
Thelma. Okay.
Wow.
He managed the team. She managed the household. So it was whatever she liked, he was good with, except for where the TV went in the great room, because Jerry's watching
basketball
TV from home, and where the TV went, there was this entire massive built-in wall where autographed basketballs went from winning tournament games, and the rings were kept. And
sure.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's part of the decor.
Right.
It has to be, because that's his life.
Right, and it was a 2-story room. The ceilings were 20 feet tall, which was interesting because neither one of them was very tall.
Sure. How interesting.
Oh, my God. They were awesome, and they became really good friends of ours. Thelma went to New York with us. She went to Venice with us. I mean, we traveled and had a good time.
Yeah. You've done a lot of... One of the other threads in John Robert's book, The Candy in My Pocket, is of course his struggles with diabetes, but also his going to the Oscars and going to various places around the world and meeting all sorts of people. Could you talk for a couple of minutes about... You were in Nigeria. I counted something in the neighborhood of... 20 times? 12 visits. 12 visits.
Yeah, 12 visits. 12. I had a client that we designed a home for here. It was a raw space. It had to be totally built out. We had to prepare all the architectural drawings. We had to get the permit. We had to get the workmen. We had to get the furniture, the artwork, the electronics, everything, because
and the
he lived in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I had met with them 3 times, with the wife once. They loved all the selections, although she made some changes. She had to
But that's relatively common. You actually must like that, because that's where the collaborative nature of the business comes in.
I love it. Yeah. I had no idea that I was even going to get to meet her, let alone let her make some selections. So that was awesome. We did that entire job, in 6 months' time.
Wow.
And when my client came back to Chicago, it was my job to give him the first tour of it. He had not seen anything. And when we were done with our tour, he looks at me and he says, "I want to build a new house in Lagos." I'm like, "Where's that?" He's like, "Nigeria, Africa." He's like, "I'll send you the plans that the architect that we thought was going to do the job has drawn up." He says, "I'm sure you can do much better."
Wow.
And, it was a 40,000 square foot estate. There was room for 25 bodyguards, sleeping berths for 25 bodyguards.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The security was intense. We hired an Israeli security firm to help us with some of the details that we needed to know about.
Be secure, yeah.
Bulletproof glass. Oh. When I took the drawings to the city for the review and approval of my drawings, the building department was headed by a woman, which I thought, I mean, I'm not discrediting women in any way. I think women are brilliant, but, we're in Africa.
Right.
But they are very civilized, I will say, in Nigeria. So anyways, she looks at my drawing. She loved everything. And I said, "Well, and it's going to have bulletproof glass." And she looks at me and she goes, "Well, for what kind of bullets?"
Oh, my God. Wow.
I mean, I didn't have a clue. I'm like, you have to ask the Israelis that. I don't know.
Wow. It's a great story in the book. There's so many stories in here. We're not going to didn't get the Oscars. We didn't talk about how we're going to take a break, but how, you were basically blind for 4 years because of diabetes. It's a remarkable story, John. Remarkable. We will continue on after a short break. Welcome back. I've been having a ball with John Robert Wiltgen here, talking about his book, The Candy in My Pocket, and about his struggles with and triumphs over diabetes. You've had all manner of physical problems. You have lost part of a leg to this horrible disease that so many people have. I mean, it is just... Is it more widespread now than or more easily diagnosed, or?
Well, there are still a great number of people around the world that have not been diagnosed that have it. But there are 537 million diagnosed cases of this disease on the planet.
Do you, John, you obviously are grateful for the kind of life and career that you've had. How do you express that? Do you express that gratitude at all, or just try to live to the fullest?
No, I try to express that gratitude. Of all the people that needs to hear that gratitude the most, there are two. There's my mother, who gave me her kidney.
Yep.
And
right. We forgot the kidney transplant.
Right, which is now 86 years old in me, the kidney, and still working.
And they did not think that was possible at all.
No, they said 12 to 15 years, and then you'd need another one.
Wow.
I don't even like to talk about it.
Yeah. Don't then.
So I try to tell her all the time how grateful I am, and I try to express how grateful I am by doing extraordinary things with her.
Yeah, good for you.
You know, I've taken her to the Academy Awards. We've gone to meet the Pope. We've done some...
Well, she's a devout Catholic, yes.
She is a devout Catholic.
Yeah.
She is. Although, I will say, in the tenure of her Catholicism, she has changed her views on certain things. When she first found out that I was gay, she wasn't very happy. Let's just put it that way.
Because you were outed, yes. You did not.
Right.
You did not come out to her.
That is,
and well, those were the days.
That's how the story goes.
Those were the days. You write something in here. You were married and have been for a couple of years to Stephen, this charming guy who didn't want to come on the radio, but he's sitting here, very supportive. You write in your book, since retiring at 57, I am busier than ever. Stephen and I got married. One Sunday, after she came home from church, he asked Mom, a devout Catholic, if it was all right with her. She started to cry. That's what mothers do. I am lucky Mom got over the whole gay thing years ago because her tears were tears of joy. That's really a nice sentiment, and it's nicely put in here, too. And Stephen believes, you write later in that chapter, Stephen believes positive energy and prayer help us improve physically and mentally. He organized a prayer group of about 40 people who texted each other at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day. This is when you got, aside from everything else, John, aside from the troubles with diabetes, you also got COVID, and that scared you.
It scared a lot of people because no one knew anything about it at the time that you had it and I had it.
I know. I said, well, what can you give me? They said, well, here's some water. I go, wait, that's not going to help me.
The doctors weren't even coming into our rooms at that time. I mean, they would call you up on a phone and say, how are you feeling?
I know.
I'm like, what?
I want to read something that Holly Hunt, who is a famous designer here, had to say about your book. Cynthia Rowley's pretty famous, too. She said something about it, but I like Holly. John has a talent for storytelling and writing as well as for design. But the most important part of this memoir is his amazing energy and determination to live hurdles of the debilitating disease, type 1 diabetes. He enjoys a full life, gathering fabulous, famous, and adventurous friends, and he gives back to many far more than he takes. He never looks back, always forward, choosing to be happy and fully engaged while hiding his scars and physical damaged parts with Versace. That's a great quote.
Right.
How difficult, John, was it to write this book? And what compelled you to do it? Was it saying, well, I'm going to cut back on my design work and I need something to do?
No, I retired after being really sick in intensive care for 20 days with 4 different kinds of pneumonia. While I was at Rush, because Northwestern only had room in the morgue and I didn't feel like going there.
Good choice.
Like 5 other patients on the floor died from similar diagnoses to what I had. So the fact that I survived that was a blessing.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I just thought that maybe my time is up. I mean, I couldn't keep going in and out of the hospital and trying to run a business.
Yeah, sure.
And so Stephen and I discussed it, and we just thought, now is the time for me to pursue other avenues. And so one of the other avenues, of course, was writing the book. Having never written a book before, It took an awfully long time. I mean, the first thing I did was went through 6,000 pages of medical records and organized those. And then I went through all of the publicity that had been written about me and kind of wove that in between the medical records. And when all of that was done, my outline for the book was 90 pages.
Oh, good Lord. Good Lord.
When that was done, then it was time to start actually writing.
One of the things that characterizes the book, though, is it's, you do have some names not mentioned in the book, but it's also I think it's a very honest book, and it's sometimes, I think, and very introspective, too. And to be honestly introspective, I have always found to be a very tough task.
I would agree. It's very challenging. It's like, oh, God, do I want people to know that? Do I?
Exactly.
And then I thought, you know what? In order to interest them, I have to tell them everything. I can't hide it. I can't hide my emotions. I can't hide my private life. I have to put it all out there, which is what I've done here, although I did cut.
We got tens of thousands of words.
Tens of thousands of words, yes, which is why I wrote at the very end, to be continued.
To be continued, because you've got some of those words sitting around somewhere. You also write in the book, I live as if there was a diabetic me and the unreal me, perhaps a condition of split personalities. I much prefer my unreal life, still do to this day. It is pretty unreal, John. I got to tell you. I mean, that we have not told dozens of stories in here about what it's like to work for Steve Harvey, and you're also very, very. You mentioned some of your clients, but you're also very private with your clients because that's also the kind of business you were in.
There was a lot that I would not disclose to other people. I wasn't that kind of designer. When there was an opportunity for publicity and exposure, of course, I went for it, provided it was not going to reveal my clients, number one.
Exactly.
And it was not going to offend them, even if I didn't reveal their name. So it was a challenge to negotiate all of those different ways of revealing the story without revealing too much, and still telling everything.
Even though there is, as he promises at the end of the book, to be continued, another book awaiting. You can get The Candy in My Pocket, The Wild and Crazy Life. It could use another adjective. It could be the wild and crazy and inspiring life of a type 1 diabetic. The Candy in My Pocket. It's John Robert Wiltgen. The last name is spelled Wiltgen. Amy DeBatt, thanks for the introduction. She, too, is here. Her father is coming on next. John, it's really a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, my God. Thank you so much for having me here today. It was
a pleasure to read this book. It's a fascinating story. It was very evocative for me because I knew many of these places and many of these people, and getting an award from Essie Cups in it, and there's so much in here. So find it, ladies and gentlemen. Not hard to find. You know how to do that. John Robert Wiltgen, Wiltgen, a proud son of Arlington Heights.